Thanks very much, David. So to dig into some of those issues raised there, we've got a great panel of experts who are behind some of my favorite robots around, actually, in my top 10, certainly. First of all, we've got Professor Chris Melhuish, who is the director of the Bristol Robotics Laboratory, Tom Athron, who's the Group Development Director at John Lewis Partnership, Chris Allam, who's the Managing Director of Future Programs and Services at BAE Systems, and finally, we've got Ian Funnell, who's the Managing Director of ABB UK. Thanks very much, all of you. Just to start with what you said, David, we're hearing today from the Prime Minister, actually, about STEM and the importance of STEM. You're suggesting something rather different, maybe something rather old-fashioned that looks a lot more like a humanities degree that I did, so I might be more employable in the future.
No, I think that is right. And there's something that Nicola said also in her session. I think she used that acronym STEAM rather than STEM. So no, what our research shows is not that STEM is not important. It is absolutely critical. In fact, the research shows that there ought to be up to 4.5 million further jobs in the STEM area. But what it does say is that increasingly we're going to be working with robots. And actually what that requires is a balance of skills. It requires some of those rather basic employability skills in terms of human interaction, that ability to socialize, debate, to synthesize things. And it's that combination of skills.
And that figure as well, that's 65% of jobs that haven't been invented yet. We can all think of things like a social media manager that didn't exist 20 years ago. Do you have any inkling of what those sorts of jobs might be, just in terms of job titles?
Well, we don't. I mean, if I had that crystal ball, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be doing something very different. But we do look at what's happened over the last period. And it's really interesting looking at some of the data. Some of that data looking backwards, when I mentioned those figures about the 800,000 jobs that have gone, and the 3.5 million that have been created. No, they're not job for job, but the sort of things we'd all recognise is if you go through the census data, then of course we no longer have nearly as many typists or clerical workers. We have a lot more workers doing things such as all those things that frankly many of us in this room rely on when we have a little free time, things that help us experience life in a different way, be it jobs in gyms or jobs in the entertainment sector, and it's those sort of things. So it's not job for job. Going forward, it's going to be that combination of those human skills that help that interaction with the STEM skills.
Okay, and so to bring the cutting edge of research, Professor Melhuish, you're at the Bristol Robotics Laboratory. It's a real hub for robotics. It's great. It's a hub that's not in London. A lot of this with robots is actually outside London, which is an interesting rebalancing. The big headlines, driverless cars, things like Go. What are the sort of incipient technologies that we're not hearing so much about that will shape the workforce of 2030?
Well, I think one of the big things is will be Industry 4.0. Now, if we, for example, define a robot to be a physical entity with intelligence, and we're capable of interacting with humans, or possibly not with humans, being autonomous, then this really is a phenomenal element which can then fit into many areas. So if you take that element and then you start connecting it, now you've got then you have this huge connectivity, and then you have the fusion of the digital world with the physical world. You then have the opportunity for this massive connectivity, Internet of Things, Internet of Services, and therefore, you, in terms of businesses have got a phenomenal opportunity to join in and actually consider these set of technologies to change their to change the way that they carry out their businesses, and most importantly, they must be adaptive in order to exploit those opportunities.
I mean, in terms of that adaptability, so Tom, at the John Lewis Partnership, very famous for how employees work within that business. Are there concrete steps you're taking right now for this coming wave of automation to sort of train employees to get them ready? Are they ready?
So, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that the way that we think about automation and robotics is as part of the sort of productivity conundrum, to think about it as a sort of a two-sided equation. I mean, the way we're attacking the issue around automation, or the opportunity, is not just to think about it as a way of doing things for less and therefore cutting costs, but also to think about the opportunity that it provides to enter new markets and to drive growth and to look for new revenues. And the reason I say that is because what it does is it forces us to put, I guess, the customer at the heart of our thinking. So when we're thinking about automating a warehouse, for example, and we spent a lot of time, a lot of money over the course of the last 10 years investing in automated warehousing. Up in Milton Keynes, we have 3 now that support the John Lewis operation. And not only has it allowed us to operate with fewer people and at a much lower cost than we otherwise would be at our current scale, but also what it's allowed us to do is offer new things to our customers, which they love. And ultimately what it's been doing is acting as a driver of growth. And I think probably the best example of that is in picking in singles and finding an automated way of managing your warehouses. What we can do is then open up what we do to the internet and click and collect, which allows us now, for example, to order as customers up to 8 o'clock the previous night for collection in the following day in any Waitrose across the country. So not just thinking about automation as a way of saving money, but as a way of driving growth as well.
Okay, in terms of the collaboration as well, just to move on to you, sorry, to get that right, Ian. So one of my favorite robots, again, is the Yumi robot, which you guys make. Can you tell us a bit about what that is? Because I think that's quite an interesting example of sort of the way this collaboration might work.
This is one of the sort of first collaborative, I suppose, truly collaborative robots. In the past, you would have large industrial robots that you stick in a cage and keep well away from people. This is far from that. It's a little desktop. In fact, if you go to the reception, the drinks reception tonight, you will see it there. It will not be serving drinks, and it certainly won't be mixing cocktails, but it will be demonstrated by one of our guys who has just graduated as an apprentice. And he will demonstrate the capabilities of this thing. So it is designed to work in collaboration with a human being. So typically, the sort of thing is you would have somebody working on the other side of the bench doing a set of tasks, and the Yumi robot doing another set of probably more repetitive tasks. And I was, just an example, I was at a customer last Thursday, and they're looking at very much a sort of productivity gain in terms of the use of this, Tom, and trying to reduce the amount of time to pull together little electrical packages. So a human being typically can do that in 28 minutes. This robot can do it in 4. So there's some significant productivity gains by deploying something like this in that sort of circumstance.
And a lot of what ABB does is automate things for other businesses that maybe haven't done it already. Which sectors do you find are embracing this, which are a bit slower to realize this is happening?
The obvious one that everybody quotes is clearly automotive as being an adopter of robotics. And that's been the case for many, many years. Food and beverage, I guess, would be another sector where picking, packing, palletizing of products would be high on the agenda. But there are so many of the other industrial small to medium enterprise units that simply do not have any form of robotics at all, or automation for that matter. And I think that's one of the key messages that came out of the Prime Minister's speech this morning about the productivity in UK PLC.
Okay, and so BAE Systems, another really good robot. I don't even seen the Taranis, which I believe you worked on. It is terrifying. It's a drone that sort of looks like a stealth fighter. And when you hear Elon Musk talking about the end of humanity, it will be delivered by that. So thank you for that. But in terms of that, BAE obviously does a lot. You sell a lot of robotics. Yep. You use it yourself. In terms of where the UK stands compared to other countries, Germany is obviously very good, USA. Yep. Where are we globally?
So first, let me pick up on Taranis. It really isn't that scary because it's always controlled by a human. All we've done is just move the roles around so humans can do what they're really good at. So that's Taranis. In terms of the UK, if you look at what we do, we've got less startups in automation and robotics than almost any other country, and yet we've got the best engineers. So there's this real dilemma that says, why is that? What's stopping us? So there are 2 key things on that. So I was at a plant in Samlesbury just to kind of push the regional economy thing again, our latest robotics facility. What we've got in there is something where the human and the robot work together. So there's a single robot doing what could have been the work of many before. What we've done is now upskill, and just watching them work together was fascinating. So the way they interact, who's doing what, the way they pass control between them. It then moves into what's actually a cage with another robot, back to the traditional. The drive of efficiency in there is absolutely fantastic. So 10-fold, 40-fold improvement in efficiency. What do you need to do it? You need a bit of willpower that says you'll get out. So what do we do? So we work with education, we work with SMEs, and we'll find an area of space we can work in. So catapult centres and things like that are actually great. What we need is more people doing that and more of that automation, because the result is absolutely fascinating. And as we said over there, you can actually use that in products of yours as well. So we can automate our products for our customers, but particularly here looking at how do you automate and bring robots into the workplace.
So, that's interesting. Professor, we're hearing from the Prime Minister about turning startups into scale-ups, and it's true there's definitely a problem with successful businesses going to the next stage. But, I mean, you're working with this engineering talent. There's a lot of it. How do you find it is for them when they're coming to spinning out companies, trying getting started?
Well, I think, first of all, perhaps you might say that we need to address the issue of not simply addressing the industries which exist at the moment. I think it'd be very interesting in 10 years' time to look at whatever the industrial portfolio is here, or the commercial portfolio, and say, are these the same companies? Because as I think you pointed out, we don't know where will our grandchildren be working. So in that case, if that's the case, either everyone's going to be working for other companies, or are they going to be working for UK companies? And if they're going to be working for UK companies, where are those brand new UK companies? And what are we doing about helping them to create the new businesses of tomorrow? So for example, in Bristol, at BRL, we have our own incubator, and we are encouraging, changing the culture of that community of students and staff to create their own companies. And we've had a number of successful companies that are now able to stand on their feet. But there is an issue, which is when companies first start, they need that period of time and stability and support in order to actually launch themselves, to be the startups that are then the scale-ups. But I think there's a real issue, is the pre-startup phase. What are we doing in the UK to genuinely try to support that new and emerging potential of the UK? And at the moment, I'm not sure we're doing a huge amount.
So to take it further from that startup to scale-up stage, so we think of AI companies like DeepMind, which was in London. It was bought by Google for £400 million, and now it's contributing to Silicon Valley's bottom line, not London. Same for Magic Pony Technology, which is another AI startup bought by Twitter for something like £200 million. That's exactly the stage where we want it to stay in the UK, presumably either go public or just become a successful mega corporation here. Anyone who wants to answer this, how do we stop the next DeepMind being bought by Google? Is there anything we can do to stop it? Do we want to?
I mean, I'll have a go. I think part of it, if you go to the comments that are always made about Silicon Valley, a lot of it is around the sheer interactivity of that ecosystem that's there. I think this is something that has to be sort of reinforced here in the UK. We have to create that similar ecosystem that encourages businesses to want to be here, to want to grow here, to partner with others on this platform as well. Although people will often look at tax rules or equity capital markets, and of course those are all parts of it. I think the biggest thing we hear is what drives success is being part of that ecosystem, and if we can just reinforce that, then I think we'll have more businesses wanting to stay in that position to go from startup to scale up and be part of that very successful community here.
And you mentioned there will be new jobs created, but there will certainly be a painful initial stage where jobs are lost. And we've seen this year in sort of political events, what happens when people don't feel like they're getting the rewards of this economy, as you mentioned it, going to the top few. In terms of that very short-term thing, there are various ideas like a universal basic income. What can we do to mitigate that so we don't have another Luddite sort of King Lud scenario? Is there anything we can do? And what's businesses' role in that maybe rather than governments?
So I think if I can pick up on that, there's a huge amount about education here. So the world is moving quickly, but there's nothing in this we've not seen before. So the first, second, and third industrial revolutions had the same thing. So everybody was there saying, this is absolutely wrong, you can't do it. But in reality, when you look back, it happened. The key to this is education. So our huge advantage now is we can educate. So we're now spending 16 million on the Skills Academy. As part of that, robotics are a key part of it from day one. So every person who walks out of school into our establishment or leaves university and comes to work with us goes through that process of learning about automation, the value of information and data, and robots aren't a threat, they're just part of the world. If you do that with the young people, you'll take a huge step forward. You need everybody to move, though. It's not just about the education and the academies, it's also about industry and the way they behave.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. So young people might be fine because they'll be trained for it, but what about the rest of us who are replaced by robots?
But I think there's an urban myth out there that says every time you put a robot in place, you are going to lose jobs, and that's not necessarily the case. And I know of many small or medium-sized enterprises who in parallel to introducing robotics, can actually retrain the people that they currently have. And those people then program the robots. So it doesn't always have to happen. And I think there's a real, maybe that's one of the cultural issues we have as a country, where we assume that we're going to have mass unemployment as a result of deploying automation. And I don't think that's absolutely true.
And one of the other aspects of a super connected age, which we've been hearing about, is security, cybersecurity, to use the awful cyber word, but also privacy. There's so much data out there, and people are, I think, increasingly a bit more aware of how it's being used and don't want it to be used improperly. Are you looking at, Tom, are you looking at that in terms of your employees and your customers and the rest of you? How important is this issue as we press ahead with robotics?
It's enormously important. I mean, it is right at the top of our agenda. I think that particularly with a business with a brand like ours, with sort of notions of love and trust attached to it, I think that it's something that we need to protect enormously. Because, well, I mean, the wheels can come off pretty quickly, actually, I think, if you don't take it seriously. So it's something that's right at the top of our agenda. I think the challenge is finding ways to, I mean, clearly the safest way to manage your customer data is just not to have any, and that can't be the answer. What we've got to do is find ways of using our customer data in a way which is secure and safe and offers all the privacy that our customers want and expect from a business like ours, but at the same time, use it in a way which is intelligent, that allows us to offer things or to put ideas in our customers' mind that reflect their unmet needs. And I think that there are businesses out there who do that incredibly well. And I think that there is a big technology angle to that, which represents a huge opportunity. But I just think the challenge is to find the balance between not using the data at all as the best way of keeping yourself safe and finding ways of unlocking value from your customers.
Professor?
Well, the interesting thing is that the shaping of, we have different flavors of artificial intelligence. Now, one of the breakthrough technologies has been the deep learning of Watson, which is an American IBM system, which recently won Jeopardy. Now, the reason why it works is because it absorbs huge quantities of data, which is in human form, natural language form. It's implicit, it's ambiguous, but it sucks it all in and it makes sense of it. Now, this is a phenomenal new technology, but it's statistical computation, if you like. It's not like the old lots and lots of if-then. So it's a different approach. It's the similar approach, if you like, in the same way that handwriting is recognized. This concept of deep learning. The point is millions and millions and millions of examples. So you need data. So any company in the future hiding or not using data is probably doomed to extinction. So you've got to be able to be sucking in that data in order to make sense of the particular application that you're running. Now, the problem with that, and it's something which we all need to be really aware of, is that exposes you to risks with security. Because at one stage you want to get out there and get that data, particularly, I mean, it's not just all about automation. If you're, as was said before, once you have robots working with human beings, for example, in the assisted living, helping the elderly, etc., you're generating lots and lots of products within that supply chain, and those products will be connected to everything else, and those products are vulnerable unless companies take the appropriate precautions to minimize the risks of security.
So, Chris, actually, maybe you can tell us a bit about that, given BAE has a huge cybersecurity arm. how much of a problem is this, and how much of a problem specifically is it for robotics and a more connected age?
So two things. I think everybody in this room believes the threat is real. So somebody will have touched this at some point in their business careers, and right now it'll be top of the corporate agenda. We're very fortunate in that we offer to governments and industries protection via our cybersecurity business, and obviously we use that to defend ourselves. So it's extremely real. You have to act responsibly with other people's data. The flip of that says there is no way you can ignore this. Data, if you think robots are some kind of revolution, data is way more than that. Data is the future of all of our businesses. Everything we do now is connected. Back to robotics. So our robots now know everything about our industrial setup, its procedures, its processes, things we spent hundreds of years learning, and now in a single robot. The advantage is we can teach another robot immediately how to do that. The disadvantage is it's possible, unless you protect yourself, to remove that intellectual property. So with that, there's threat and reward. So act responsibly, set your systems up so they can be and are protected, is my advice.
And in terms of something like driverless cars, it feels like, bar that Tesla plowing into a truck, the technology is more or less there. And I mean, the number of miles that Google's cars have done is extraordinary. On the other hand, things like insurance and regulation here on UK roads are nowhere near ready, and that's probably what's going to hold it back. Is regulation helping or hindering robotics and AI?
Not from a manufacturer's point of view. I mean, there's some fundamentals, I guess, in terms of health and safety, but beyond that, I don't think regulation really applies. I mean, I think for me, it's all about driving industry to improve productivity. It's about incentivizing. It's about encouraging. And making people aware of what the facilities are. And I don't think regulation has a part to play in that at all.
David?
No, I think at the moment it is, but I think it's adapting. I was 2 points going to make, Tom. One is that I think regulation is adapting. It's hard to adapt at pace. But I think the other thing is your point on cars as an example. I think other industries are adapting to accommodate. So you look at the insurance sector, there's a lot of work being done in the insurance sector to look at how can insurance become far more linked to the real risks through data. So you can see that linking to driverless cars. The points made earlier about the amount of data that now insurance robotic engines can suck in on weather, on accident data, on traffic density to create a very real picture of where insurance risks are, and then apply that, whether it's frankly to a car that we drive or a driverless car. So you do see industries adapting to support that development together. And I think regulation will have to adapt at the same pace.
At the same time, there's always a danger with hype. So, journalists are sometimes guilty of this. There's a lot of hype around AI just because of the Terminator scenario, because of the unemployment scenario. It's a great story. On the other hand, even the cleverest deep learning systems still take, thousands of hours of training. They can't do very simple tasks that humans find easy. Is this just a clear path to our glorious, shiny robotic future, or are we going to bump into hitches along the way? And where will we see those hitches? Anyone wants to have a go at that one?
I'll have a go. I mean, I'm not an expert on AI at all. But what I would say is that I think that when we think about technology and we think about the deployment of things like artificial intelligence or VR or augmented reality or whatever it might be, I think it's very easy to paint a sort of dystopian, like a picture of a dystopian future where no one talks to each other. And the truth is that for an organization like mine, I think, Chris has already said it, that humans and machines will always be better than humans or machines alone. And if you can design your business such that it takes advantage of those human interactions as well as the deployment of sensible technology, then actually what you've got is the recipe for success. And particularly when your business is in a high-service world where the deployment of really sensible technology can free up the people that you employ to do things that customers find really important. So just to give you an example, customers don't find it important that people scan off sales in supermarkets and change price tickets. What they do find important is when they can provide you with sensible advice on things like a wine to go with a particular food, or how should I cook this particular piece of fish? And if you can use technology to sort of to unlock the I guess, the commodity activity that isn't important to your customers and reinvest the money that you're saving in the things that are really important to your customers, I think there's a sort of a, there's a double whammy effect there, which businesses should look to take advantage of.
In terms of that, especially
That's nothing to do with AI, by the way.
Yeah, it's just a general. But in terms of, so talked about my favorite robots. My least favorite robot is the bagging machine robot in supermarkets. Unexpected item. That has just made no one's life better at all. It's horrible. But thank you. Stand-up routine. How important is it to bring your customers with you? So sometimes it feels like innovation is being forced upon you when you get the latest iMessage update or something like that. How do you make sure this is something the customers, the public, are buying into and they can see the benefits of it?
So I think it's really important that there's a little piece in there that says, if we pick the wrong areas, you'll get one of those little bumps in the road. And you kind of picked an example. So where you try and literally replace something that has been designed around a human, you're probably going to get a little bump in the road. Yeah. You could argue driverless cars are actually in that space of, actually humans quite enjoy driving, they're pretty good at it, and it's kind of designed around them. If you want to move something from A to B, you wouldn't design an autonomous system to do it that way. You'd kind of strip all that out, you put in some infrastructure, and actually getting a car down the road is dead easy, once you've got rid of all the things that humans need to let them do it. So road signs and all that stuff that helps us is of no use to an automated system at all. But you're trying to make the two exist together. So you're kind of doing it the hardest way you possibly can, going for that use case that's the most difficult. Well, there's loads of easy stuff that you can go and do. So flying aircraft to A to B with no pilot, that's easy. We can do that today, should we choose to do it. Transport aircraft is where you'd start. So there's loads of places where we invent bumps in the roads because we want to do really difficult things and we want to challenge ourselves. But automation, AI, that'll come via the things that we don't actually enjoy doing, because that's okay. Society will allow it.
Okay.
And I think from a technology provision point of view, I think the more you get into collaboration and AI, the collaborative robot we have is, I guess, one of the first where it is actually the customers that are telling us how these things should be applied. We're simply providing the kit, and now I think the telescope has changed around, so we're not providing a robot for a particular application. So I think that will help the bumps in the road, because if you're working with the people who are using these things, you will smooth it out.
But is that slightly the problem with, say, you've got Silicon Valley engineers sitting there who've grown up as kids thinking of driverless cars or inventing drinks that mean you don't have to have meals, because that's what they're interested in. But actually, what you don't have amongst all those engineers is, ethicists, lawyers thinking about these things, and maybe the technology is getting to that stage. We need to include them in the design process a bit more than we have so far.
I think there is something in that, and I think you'll find some of those startups, will do that. I think the other thing is that, the customer or the employee will eventually have a big impact into what's successful. To your bagging machine, I'm sure eventually, if customers don't want that, then that will change. And innovation is like every other part of industrial evolution. There are things which are successful and things that fail. So there are many of those innovative ideas or robotic ideas that won't be successful, but you need to go through that to get to the next stage. And I think we're in that phase. And Tom, to your earlier point around, is it all going to be a single line? Again, I'm not a robotics expert, but I don't think we should fear that. I think it's quite easy to get into this terrible concern about the social impact. But that is progress. And when someone says to me they can see a point in their lifetime that will get to that point of sort of singularity when artificial intelligence is greater than human intelligence, I struggle with that concept. But it sounds like it's going to come at some point, so we're far better to embrace it and make sure we have the right sort of ethics around that than hope it doesn't happen.
Professor?
Well, we just have to be very careful that we don't participate in the overhyping of this. In 1956, there was a meeting with the best minds in the world, and they got some money from the US. This was based, and the proposition was, look, in 2 months, if we get 10 really, really smart people together, and they were smart, then we can crack artificial intelligence. Well, we haven't. And so we're in a situation now where we have to be very, very careful. So actually, the paradox is that, of course, computers are really, really good at doing things that we're not very good at. If I ask you what the square root of pi is, that would be a bit interesting. But similarly, they're not very good at the things that we're good at. So they don't have theory of mind, the I know that you know that I know stuff. And this is, we just do this intuitively. And the paradox is that we have to get that type of intelligence, as well as the statistical logic that we'll be exploiting from wherever, from the cloud or what have you. And this is not trivial. Now, it's crackable, but it's not trivial. So I think that we won't see a sort of a change in the world from a Friday when we didn't live in a world with lots of robots, and then on the Monday everything is taken over by robots. That's not going to happen. What is a decent time for that transition? That's a bit difficult to say. 10 years, it will be very interesting to have this conversation again.
Having been warned about over-participating in the hype, I'm going to over-participate in the hype. What you're talking about, just a bit more speculative at the end, general artificial intelligence, the idea that a computer will be equal to a human and have a very human intelligence, and then after that there's a lot of speculation it becomes a lot smarter than a human and then becomes a lot smarter than a human, and it's the end for all of us. That's what Elon Musk believes, that's what Stephen Hawking said. A lot of people are skeptical about it. Just first of all, do you think we'll get that? This is for everyone on the panel. When will we have a general artificial intelligence, and does it mean the end for humanity very quickly? All of you.
So when will we have it? Well, we invested in an AI company in London earlier on this year, and I don't see anything coming out of that in the next few years. Will it become the end of humanity? Maybe I'll not be around to see it, but maybe some people here will.
Okay. Professor, maybe we should have the expert view.
Well, the end of humanity,
expert as well.
End of humanity we're doing all right on our own, I think, without any... Okay. But because general intelligence, the problem with general intelligence is that it's general. And we have many streams of whatever. I mean, for example, it's very difficult to actually define what intelligence is. I once ran a lab. It was called the Intelligent Autonomous Systems Lab. We had difficulty in defining what intelligence was. We were a bit troubled by autonomous, and systems was a word that if you look up has got about 500 definitions. So, but the nature of intelligence is we use different types of intelligence all the time, and trying to combine those threads means multiple R&D and then the fusion of that, and that's going to take quite a few years, I should think.
Tom, dead or not dead?
So I think there will always be a demand for something which is more emotional than a computer can ever provide. And frankly, I'm rather betting the future of the John Lewis partnership on that. But that's not to say that there isn't a role when we get to, true AI. I mean, I just don't know. I'm not sufficiently expert. I guess I'm raising the point that humans will always value other humans in an emotional way. And I think that that's important for a business frankly, for all businesses like retail, actually.
Chris, what do you reckon?
I think those stories about just be careful about what you do, be conscious, and put them into a framework that humans understand. Don't let them effectively somehow run away in technology. There are no real examples where that's happened, and I can't see it in this case. And so there are lots of other bad things that we could do. I don't think artificial intelligence is one of them.
And last word, David.
We've looked forward 20 years, not in that period. As I said earlier, I agree with Chris. That's all about the combination of the human skill and the machine skill and the balance one gets from working together. Beyond that, I couldn't even speculate.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely going to happen. I'm going to stop being a technology correspondent, become a war correspondent when the robots rise up. Thank you very much, David, Chris, Tom, Chris, and Ian. Really enjoyable to hear your insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.